Well, once we were back from the press tour, we had this, whirlwind romance kind of just in these like beautiful places all over, and we're falling in love and not able to really show it because he wasn't, that the world didn't know about the split between he and his former partner. And of course, as a woman, I was like, is that troubling? And I'd ask him, no, he swore to me that they hadn't even shared a bed for a year and that they were protecting the kids and not publicizing it. So I felt he understood me. I felt he understood where I came from. I felt that like when I was around Johnny, I felt like the most beautiful person in the whole world. It made me feel seen, made me feel like $1 million. And that kind of feeling where, it's just lavish gifts and lavish expressions of love, and how he had never met a woman like me. I mean, I remember he took the foil off of this bottle and put it on my ring finger. And I had only been with him like days, or maybe it was weeks at the time. Yeah, it was probably about a few weeks, but it just felt very intense. It was, it felt like a dream. It felt like absolute magic.
So while you're dating, I take it you're dating at this point, right?
Yeah,
While you're falling in love, you're also dating, right? Okay.
Yes. And then he would disappear. Knife. And I had it engraved with a saying that Johnny would say to me all the time, which I, thought was romantic, as funny as that is to say now. Johnny just all of a sudden, I had never noticed, Johnny have a Southern, all of a sudden Johnny had this Southern accent and was really like buddies with him. And Johnny at one point insisted on buying me a horse. And I, of course, said that's extravagant. There's no way I could accept that. That's how will I take care of that horse? It just is so extravagant. So I said no, of course. Eventually, he got a hold of my dad and worked it out with my dad, like what kind of horse to buy, and then showed me a picture of this horse and said, it's yours. I had resisted for, I think, about like a month and a half or something, of him kind of bringing up the idea and me saying, that's a crazy gift. No, thank you. No, that's incredibly generous, but I couldn't accept to. All of a sudden I had a colt.
So
I felt that electricity in my body. I felt like butterflies. I couldn't see straight practically. It was just, I was head over heels in love. And he felt like that to me. He felt like he was also in love. I didn't feel like he was faking it. I felt like what we had, it felt like to me at the time, there wasn't any love like that, and I'd say something and he'd accuse me of saying something else or saying it in a different way, or he would, I felt beautiful in it. Like, stupid as that sounds, I felt pretty in this dress I picked out, and I showed it him because it's a carpet, it's red carpet. So it's like, publicized. And I kind of thought it was weird. He wasn't saying anything about it. I left him to go do this red carpet. And I was like, did you see the event I went to? Basically I felt pretty, and I thought, like, did you see that? I wanted him to say something about that, I guess. And he said, well, This is after he stopped talking to me for some time, didn't tell me why. When he came back in my life, he wouldn't explain why he was acting different. He just kind of acted mad at me and didn't know what I had done wrong. And when I brought up the dress and the event, because it was an event to support a charity I was really involved with at the time, and I said, you know, did you see that thing? And he said, yeah, I think the whole world saw that kid. That's how they'll remember you. That's how the world will remember you. And I was like, oh, come on. I mean, it's like, but it, you know, I felt good in it. I felt good. And he said, yeah, kid, that's what you're putting out there in the world. No one will ever forget that. And that's all they'll see you as. That's what you wanted. That's what you were going for. You know, my dress was low cut. I get it. It's low cut. But I felt, you know, I felt really embarrassed and horrible that I wore that. I felt like, how could I have made that choice? Of course, you know, he's right. You know, you start to believe it. I started to believe that made a lot of sense, of course. But it didn't stop with that. It was clothing in general. And when I walked out of the house, it wasn't just like, hey, you're not allowed to wear that. It was like, oh, really? That's what you're wearing. No wonder you get cast in those roles. No wonder you that's what you are. That's what you're making it. And it continued. And then there would be a blow up. And at first it was just to throw something, smash some things. It loves to smash up a place, an apartment, furniture. Is what it started with. Glass. Threw glass at me, and I remember it was summer. And he just threw this glass across the kitchen, and it didn't hit me, but it shattered behind me. And I remember thinking that it like very easily could have hit me. And that calling me a whore, it didn't start with using the whore word. It was just comments until it would escalate. And then I started to notice the pattern of escalation where he'd throw glass or turn over a table. Then he would hit the wall, and then he'd hit the wall really close to my head. You know, like when I'm standing there, you know, just hit the wall, screaming at me. But then he would disappear and get clean and sober, and he'd come back and tell me that he was done drinking. He was over it. He was done. Cleaned himself up. He had done it before, and he'd do it again. And then he would go back to this like wonderful, like almost like just unreal, like but real, you know, but unbelievably nice, sensitive, kind, warm, generous, interesting, funny man that I loved. And he would make me feel so loved. Like I would feel so distant from that thing that was so scary that I would not even recognize it too. And that was how, you know, our relationship kind of started to develop in that first year.
Do you remember the first time that he physically hit you?
Yes.
Please tell the jury about it.
It was it's seemingly so stupid, so insignificant. I will never forget it. It changed my life. I was sitting on the couch and we were talking. We were having a normal conversation, you know, just there was no fighting, no argument, nothing. And he was drinking, and I didn't realize at the time, but I think he was using cocaine because it was like there was a jar of cocaine out on the table. I realize that sounds weird, but it was like an actual vintage jar of it. But I didn't see him use it at the time, so I didn't really factor that in. I just, you know, he's drinking and we're talking, and there's music playing, and he's smoking cigarettes, and we're sitting next to each other on the couch. And I asked him about the tattoo he has on his arm. And to me, it just looked like black marks. I didn't know what it said. It just looked like muddled, faded tattoo that was hard to read. And I said, what does it say? And he said it says wino. It says wino. And I didn't see that. I thought he was joking because it didn't look like it said that at all. And I laughed. It was that simple. I just laughed because I thought he was joking. And slapped me across the face. And I laughed. I laughed because I didn't know what else to do. I thought, this must be a joke. This must be a joke. Because I didn't know what was going on. I just stared at him, kind of laughing still, thinking that he was going to start laughing too to tell me it was a joke. But he didn't. He said, "You think it's so funny? You think it's funny, bitch. You think you're a funny bitch." And he slapped me again. Like, it was clear it wasn't a joke anymore. And I stopped laughing, but I didn't know what else to do. You know, I didn't know what to do. You would think you would have a response, but I, as a woman, had never been hit like that. I'm an adult and I'm sitting next to the man I love, and he slapped me for no reason, it seemed like, and I missed the point. It was that stupid. Second slap, I know he's not kidding, but I don't know what else to say or do, so I just stared at him. I didn't say anything. I didn't react. I didn't move or freak out or defend myself or say, "What are you doing? You're crazy." I just stared at him because I didn't know what else to do. And he slaps me one more time. Hard. I lose my balance. At this point, we're sitting next to each other on the edge of the couch, or I was on the edge of the couch. And I'm all of a sudden realizing that the worst thing has just happened to me that could possibly happen to you. I realized that I wish so much he had said he was joking, because it didn't hurt. It didn't physically hurt me. I was just sitting there on this carpet, looking at the dirty carpet, wondering how I wound up on this carpet and why I never noticed that the carpet was so filthy before. And I just didn't know what else to do. I didn't know what to say. I didn't know how to react. I just sat there thinking, how much time do I have to figure out what I need to do? Because God, did he just hit me? No, I didn't want to leave him. I didn't want this to be the reality. I didn't want to have the man I was in love with. I know you don't come back from that. You know, I'm not dumb. I know you can't hit a woman. You can't hit a man. You can't hit anyone. You can't just hit somebody because I knew it was wrong, and I knew that I had to leave him. And that's what broke my heart, because I didn't want to leave him. I thought if I got up out of that room, I'd leave the best thing that ever happened to me. And I wish I could sit here and say I stood up and I walked out of that house and I drew a line and I stood up for myself. I was just looking at the dirty carpet, trying to will myself to get up, to walk out of the door, because I knew I needed to. And I really slowly, I stood up, and I remember looking at him in the eye and just looking at him, frankly, because I didn't know what else to do. And before I know it, he starts crying. And, you know, like I had never seen an adult man cry. I didn't even really see my dad cry at my grandma's funeral. You know, it's weird. And he's crying. Tears, just falling out of his eyes. He gets down on his knees and he grabs my hands and he's touching my hands and he's saying to me, "I will never do that again. I'm so sorry, baby. I put the fucker away. I thought I killed it, and it's done. I thought I put the monster away, and I've done it before. It's done." But on his knees. And I didn't have words. I didn't know what to say. I just remember thinking that it was just, he was crying. He seemed so sorry, but I knew I couldn't just forgive him because right? That means it will happen again, no? Like I've seen the health class videos, like everyone else. And I got up in my car, I walked to the car. I didn't say anything. I made a point to not say, oh, it's okay or anything like that. I just didn't say anything. I got up, I went to the car, I sat in my car, and I felt like I sat there forever. I didn't want to turn the key. I just leaned my head up against the window. And I remember just seeing my breath on the windshield, on the glass of the window of the door, just seeing my breath and trying to will myself to have the strength to know what I should do in this moment, because I was heartbroken. And I sat there for a long time, and I eventually turned the key and drove home.
And what did you do after that?
I don't know. I don't remember what I did when I got home. I don't remember. I went to my therapist. I told her.
Objection, hearsay.
I
Also stated as to what she may have told her.
went home, and I a few days later started getting. I actually don't know how many days later, but I started getting calls and texts from Johnny. Apologizing profusely. I mean, just, he said, I'd rather cut my hand off than ever lay it on you or lay it upon you, and he had that way of talking. It felt like poetry.
Chose to stay in the relationship.
Yeah, I did. I believed it, but I believed it wouldn't. I believed that there was a line he wouldn't cross again, and that was it.
And so you stayed, correct? You stayed in the relationship?
Yes. Okay. I don't know how long it was until things got bad again. He did start drinking again. I remember it was almost, he'd start drinking again, the disappearing thing, the coming back. He'd come back like in the middle of the night to my house. And it would be unclear to me, drunk, often really drunk, and kind of accusing me, but not directly. Nothing was very direct. It was a lot of accusations, but they were veiled. What I was wearing, who I was with, why didn't I text him back? If I didn't text him back right away, this is when I was at my place in Orange, sometimes he would show up to catch me. Like that was a pretext for coming over. And by the time we were done talking, I would have thought I had convinced him that I loved him, that I only loved him, there was no one else. And then that we were back in an upswing and would go back to good, loving, like sick, romantic love, like kind, sweet, velvety love. And then it would be something I said, why did you say it that way? If I had to leave for an audition, I could guarantee that when couldn't guarantee, but 2 of those in a row. And when I came back, he was angry at me, and I wouldn't necessarily know why. And then he started accusing me of things, probably like at first it was indirect and then it became really direct. Then the punching of the walls next to my head which is a constant at that time in 2012 when he was drinking. Eventually that became him accusing me of cheating, I'd defend myself. I'd say, that's crazy. You're wrong. I would never, the normal things. And it would escalate to the point where he would push me or shove me down, and then I'd get back up. And this happened several times. That's why it's not more specific, I suppose. When I get back up, I'd look him in the eye. I made a point of getting up and looking him in the eye. It's my way of defending myself at that time. And I'd look at him, and he'd ask me if I wanted to go again, and shove me back down. Eventually, he just hit me. Remember, he hit me in the face when I denied having an affair with my ex-wife, my ex-partner at the time. And he said he had proof. I denied it. And I was walking out of the bedroom, slapped me across the face. I turned to look at him. And I said, Johnny, you hit me. You just hit me.
I'm going to ask you, defendants 1783, do you recognize this picture?
Yes, I do.
And could you tell us what it is?
It's a picture of my face with a note that Johnny left for me by the coffee. Typically is where we'd leave notes like that.
And does this accurate, Amber, let me ask it a different way.
Thank you. He would grab me by the hair, or he'd grab me by the arm, pull me into him, scream at me that way. He'd smash things around me. Then he would smash things very close to me. I'd go some other place. Like, I don't know how to describe that. I'd focus on something else. I'd stand up, look at him, try to stand up to him that way. Later, I adopted other kind of strategies to deal with it. He was accusing me of having affairs with, frankly, just one person. I had an acquaintance with somebody, and he was accusing me of being with them, and then it was accusing me of being with my friend, the one I had seen in Spain. I'm in these kind of arguments, nothing I do is working. Walking out of the room is me leaving him, walking away from me. Hey, where are you going? I'm talking to you. That it went from that to pulling me in by my arm, still shouting about the accusations. I'm trying to diffuse the situation by trying to tell him I'm not sleeping with this person and I'm not sleeping with that person. And it was kind of, as soon as it seemed as though I had convinced him of one, there was somebody else he was sure I was sleeping with. And it was a revolving door at that time. A painting I had hanging on the wall, done by my ex, who's an artist. That was, one day he was convinced that was proof I was sleeping with her or having an affair with her. I didn't really love him. And all the while I'm madly in love with him and trying to convince him. So March started with this picture of him doing a shot, and he's kind of saying, let's send it to your dad to show support. And what I remember of March is just like it's almost like it was a never-ending fight. It was just, there were breaks in it. What kept me in it is because I kept waiting for the other shoe to drop, the sobriety shoe, if you will. I kept waiting for him to get to the point where it's not supportable or anymore, and he's done with it and he's ready to get clean and sober again, because there commences a period of like pure joy. And I remember he was accusing me again of sleeping with this artist, this musician who I'd never slept with. I was denying it. I barely knew the person, and we're in the kitchen living room area, and he backhands me. And, it was, he wears a lot of rings. I remember kind of just feeling like my lip went into my teeth, and it got a little blood on the wall. Just that simple, a little bit of blood on the wall. As hard as it is to explain this, I was so caught up in the relationship and also very occupied in defending what I only could assume he believed, these accusations, that, you know, I didn't internalize, like, I didn't make that big of a deal of it. I kind of pride myself on being tough, and, you know, I don't make a big deal out of, you know, smaller injuries. And I know that sounds horrible and hard maybe to understand, but my best way to cope with it is I kind of, you know, minimize it, make sure no one, make sure he knows that I'm tough and can't knock me down, and I make a joke of it, clearly. Make light.
I'm going to, Michelle, if you can take this one down and bring up 170A.
He grabbed me by the arm, and he kind of just held me on the floor, screaming at me. I don't know how many times he hit me in the face, but I remember being on the floor of my apartment, and I remember thinking, how could this happen to me again?
Can you bring up 170? All right, and is this the picture that you sent to your mom on 3/23/2013?
Yes, it is.
Your Honor, I'm going to move the admission of 170, just that.
Yes, it was from a previous fight,
Okay.
the bruise. Proceeds to do a cavity search? He said he was looking for his drugs, his cocaine, his coke. I was wondering how somebody who didn't do cocaine and was against it, that was in and of itself causing problems in our relationship. How could I hide? Why would I hide his drugs from, like he was insinuating that I was doing it or something? It made no sense. And he was telling me we're gonna conduct a cavity search, shall we? Like, just shoved his fingers inside me. And I just stood there staring at the stupid light. I didn't know what to do. I just stood there. While he did that, he just twisted his fingers around. I didn't say, like, stop or anything.
So the next morning, what transpired?
I was so torn. I was so in love with this person because when it was good, it was so good. You've never felt love like that. At least that's how it felt. So much. I felt like he recognized me and I recognized him, and there was just something there that was the love of my life. And he was, but he was also this other thing. He was also this other thing. And that other thing was awful thing that would come out, and
take over, and it was, you couldn't see the Johnny I loved underneath it. It was this other thing. And no one told him, no one was honest with him, no one, you know, he'd pass out in his own vomit, he'd lose control of his body, his, you know, he'd lose control, and everyone would clean up after him. I cleaned up after him. I mean, this man lost control of his bowels, and I cleaned up after him. His security cleaned up after him, changed his pants in front of me. He would pass out in his own sick. You know, and then he'd walk around saying he didn't have a problem. Until he did. Until he couldn't support it anymore, and he'd get clean and he'd get sober, and then he was this thing again. This thing that made me feel so loved, that made me feel like my soulmate, as cheesy as that sounds. I just felt like he knew me. And I recognized something in him, either some part of my makeup and my background or something, that I just got it. And I loved him and understood him. It just got so scary, the other part of him. And in June, I wanted to leave him. I didn't want to leave him. I wanted to leave him. I wanted him to get better. And he expressed to me so many times when he was in that period of getting clean and sober, he would tell me, "You saved my life. Baby girl, you saved my life." Everyone else was saying that to me, and I believed it.
Really, 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 really need your love. I'm begging you to be kind.